Krystal Holm, welcome to the Conquering Everest podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So I'm looking forward to this conversation because, I've never really talked to anybody about feng shui, right? Did I say that right? Feng
Feng
shui?
Shui.
Feng
Feng Shui.
shui. And
It's
that's
spelled one way and pronounced another way, so it's kind of funny.
well, I tell you what, let's go ahead and if you don't mind, take a moment, just introduce yourself to the audience in your own words.
Sure. Well, like you mentioned, Brian, I am a Feng Shui designer and a clutter expert. I'm the founder of Design Life Studio and the creator of the Design Life Method. So I
Okay.
help mostly entrepreneurs, but with this pandemic, it's shifted a little to work from home, even, you know, employees. So I help them use feng shui the right way in their office space to help them create peace and prosperity in all areas of their life.
And what got you into this area of work? What was kind of what's the backstory, I guess, on what's Krystal's backstory?
Oh no.
Did I lose you?
I hope not. I
Okay.
don't I think my internet was just a little spotty there for a second. So
Yeah, you
um
never know.
yeah, it happens. um well, the I actually started school to become an interior designer, which I love, right? I
Mhm.
Even as a little girl, I played with my Barbie dream house all the time. Like Barbie sat on the side and I was decorating the house and rearranging the furniture and stuff. And so when I decided to go back to college as an adult, I decided to go to school for interior design. And as I was going through school, when I took my psychology class, right?
Mhm.
Everybody has those gen eds that they have to take. I took my psychology class and we had to write a psychology paper on something in our field. And so we had our choice of topics. And at that time, feng shui had been popular in Western culture for about 5 years or so. So I'd heard about it,
Mhm.
but I hadn't really had a lot of time to study it yet. I had I was introduced to energy work when I was like 9. So it's been a side interest of mine that I've always studied just for fun
Mhm.
for my whole life. And so I was like, well, this is kind of cool. Now I have this opportunity to almost like get paid to study something, right? Because it was for a class. So I decided to do my paper on feng shui, and I checked out every book that I could on the subject and was determined that I would, learn everything I needed to know. And I wrote my paper and I was more confused than ever about it from reading all the different books, all the different information. And so I started just sort of applying it to my own life to try to figure out what was the right way to do it because there was so much
Mhm.
stuff out there that didn't make sense. And so, I finished school and um, I got into my career. And you fast forward a few years, and I had moved to Hawaii. And I had just started at my dream job and a project that had been submitted to a client. The client had reviewed it and sent it back to the firm that I worked for, saying that, you know, the feng shui was off and they needed it changed. And my boss knew nothing about feng shui at all. And so she pulled the whole design team together and asked if any of us knew anything about feng shui. And at that point, I was the only one that kind of raised my hand and like put myself forward. And I really wasn't 100% sure that I knew what I was doing, but I'd been practicing it on my own house for years at that point. And this was like my opportunity to shine, so I put myself forward and she handed it off to me and I took the design and fixed it with all of what I could figure out as at the time. And I had imposter syndrome like crazy because I was
Right.
like, I don't really know if I'm doing this right. I don't know if the client knows more about feng shui than I do. Like, I think I'm doing it right, but I don't really know that I'm doing it right. And so But I really, really fell in love with the process of not just creating a beautiful space that reflects the person that lives there, but also energetically aligning them with the soul of their space so that it works for them, right? Because that's what feng shui does, right? It allows you to use your space energetically to amplify what you're trying to do.
Hmm.
It's really what makes your home your castle. Like that's the secret sauce, is having the feng shui right. And so I really fell in love with the process. And but the the fear was so big. So I was like, I found a school. I'm like, I'm gonna
Hmm.
go really, really study this, and not just from books, but I'm gonna find an actual school that teaches it. And so I found a school that taught classical or traditional Chinese feng shui, and I figured out, and I started taking on clients, and I started applying it more and more to my life, and I really just fell in love with that, and
Yeah.
I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So that was another, even childhood thing. I think I started my first
Hmm.
company when I was like 6 years old.
Oh, wow.
Which, you know, I, it was a hairdressing salon on the front porch, and I got
Yeah.
shut down right away after I cut my sister's hair. So that didn't go over so well. But business failure is a natural thing that happens to all of us in business. So,
Yeah.
um, but and so I just sort of followed the path. But yeah, I really.
Now, you had mentioned in your bio that when you were a kid, there was a time where you felt like you were never going to be more than like a housewife.
Yeah, yeah,
And so you had that entrepreneurial spirit, but you just didn't feel like this was ever going to become a reality for you for a while. Let's talk a little bit about that.
sure. Yeah, I've always had the dream of being an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
My grandparents owned their own business, and when I was little, they would babysit me after school, and so I would go to their shop after school, and play in the office like I was the CEO. Like I
Mhm.
ran the company. It was my company. So I've always had that dream. But when I was 8, my parents divorced, and my mom married a very abusive um, pedophile. And
Mm.
my life kind of changed overnight. Really, I told her what, and they covered all of that up, but it, they were always told me like how dumb I was and how stupid I was and how incapable I was and how I would never amount to anything, and I really had no value. I was a burden to them, and they made that very clear. I was an obligation to them, and my only value was in getting married and having children. Like they made that very clear. I shouldn't even go to college. Like they didn't even consider. We looked at a couple of like going to college. Like I went to hairdressing school and I became a
Mhm.
hairdresser. That was my first career, actually. I got pregnant in high school and had kids right directly out of my senior year. My oldest child is just a couple months after I graduated from high school.
Mm.
And so my parents always told me that I was never going to amount to anything. Like literally my mission should be find a man, get married, have kids, and that's it, because that's my value. And so find a good one. But
Yeah.
but at the same token, they they beat down my self-esteem and my self-worth so much that then the boyfriends I would pick were horrible humans. Like I had abusive relationship after abusive relationship, and so it wasn't. So for me there was a long process in that. The funny thing was, about the same time that I went back to school to learn feng shui, right? I was in my dream job, and I really wanted to hone in on like my specialty, right?
Mhm.
Almost like a doctor specializing in, heart surgery or whatever. This was my jam, right? I love
Right.
energy work. I love when I was introduced to energy work as a 9-year-old by my stepmother, after I who was a witch. She really taught me magic and manifesting and changing my life. And given the life I had at my mother's house, and I was so young, magic and miracles seemed like the only way out, you know? So I embraced that wholeheartedly. So as an adult, when I finally really started facing this, you know, I was working there, and I went, and a neighbor and a friend introduced me to like personal development, and I hadn't had a relationship in a while. I'd ended abusive relationships, and I knew, like, I just kept repeating a pattern of abuse, not just in romantic relationships, but friendships and jobs, that, you know, like, there was, I figured out I was the common denominator. Like, I was the broken factor in
Yeah.
why my life was horrible, right? And I wanted something different. And I was very fortunate to be introduced to like the personal development world. And as I was learning feng shui and I was taking on clients, you know, I started hearing there's, you know, they started talking to me about all of the things that why they couldn't design this space, like all the things that were keeping them stuck. And I was doing the work, and I was like putting it all together. And so I started really figuring out, like, oh, like, this is really how our homes reflect what's
Mm.
going on internally. And this is really how I developed even my method for how I work with clients now, because I was doing this work to heal all this trauma. And in studying feng shui and listening to clients, and, you know, they would all get hung up like in the clutter part of things, and
Right.
the why they couldn't do the things. And so then I started learning about that and started studying like more psychology stuff and more of the clutter stuff, and like hoarders, and what does that look like, and what's the language, and how does that all fit together. And it was my own healing journey that I went on, and feng shui was my mechanism. Like, it was the studying of looking at my own space as a reflection of me. And
Mm.
what is it really reflecting? Right? What is it reflecting now? What do I want it to reflect? Like a 3D vision board. Like, how do I, if my home is a mirror and my home is should be my castle, like, how do I use it? And so, yeah, it was really my healing journey to overcome the trauma that really brought me to where I am today, and how I work with people today.
So feng shui is, I mean, while upon initial thought about it is about creating your space and getting your energy, I guess, aligned with the space around you. But it sounds like there's also kind of this feng shui of the mind that occurs as well. Would that be accurate to say?
I would say yes. Yes, it's accurate to say. It's feng shui is really the study of the energy of your space. And the
Mm.
thing is, like, your home has an energetic frequency. It's very specific. And I was actually thinking about it the other day, and in comparing it to your home is like a battery, right? It's like a car battery. And if you go to jump charge it with some jumper cables, right? You have the black cord and the red cord, and you have the black pole
Mhm.
and the red pole, and you want to line them up, because if you crisscross them, you're really going to screw something up bad. The
Yeah.
same is true for your home. Your home is a battery. It has an energetic frequency. Either that energetic frequency aligns with you or not. It Now every home has both a red pole and a black pole. Okay?
Hmm.
But we also have an energetic frequency, right? And you either have a black cord or a red cord. You're one of the two. So when you want to get into alignment with the energy of your space, if you're a black person, you know, you kind of want to hang out in the black cord areas of your house. Whereas if you're a red cord person, you need to hang out in the red areas, and you want to avoid the other space, right?
Mm.
All of the spaces are going to have them, but we want to get you energetically aligned with it.
Yeah.
That's the feng shui part, really, getting you into alignment with your space. The the other
Oh,
part is the reflection of what it's telling you about what's going on internally,
okay.
because we use our homes as a form of expression, and what we
Mm.
express is what's going on inside of us, right? Because it's an extension of us. So we taint the frequency of the energy in our space with our own personal color, let's just say,
Mm.
right? The color of who we are. So, and what's going on. So when like you don't believe you're worthy of stuff, or you don't believe, you think you're obligated to do all these things, right? Or you don't have enough. Scarcity is a huge one, right? We surround ourselves with it in our environment, and it's all
Mm.
reflected at us 24/7 because that's what we see ourselves as. And it might
Mm.
look like, you know, this is just my space. I've decorated it the way I think I am, but we don't look at the bigger, deeper picture of what is it saying, right? About our mindset, our scarcity, our obligation, our worthiness beliefs. What are the things that we own telling us about what we believe about ourselves? And where is the work that needs to be done so that we can align with the abundance of the universe and the world and your corner of it, which is your space. Your
Mm.
space is literally your corner of the universe. It's your little tiny plot of the universe. And what do you want to align it with? Do you want to align it with the scarcity part because that energy is there? And if that's what you painted it with, that's what you're going to get. If you want to align it with the abundance of the universe, you have to align your energy with that abundance. But that's all internal. It's reflected externally, but it's still a reflection of the internal. So your home is literally a mirror for what's going on inside. You've just never been taught how to read it.
Yeah.
Feng Shui allows you to read it, and so that you can change it. Because if you can change it, now you can reflect something else to yourself, like who you want to be and how you want to show up. And that
Mhm.
allows you to be that person. It literally makes room for you to become that person. So, feng shui at its core is like the secret sauce to like success in any venture, whatever it is. For me, when I applied feng shui in my life, for example, I was getting started with my little business and I was taking on clients, and I still was working a job full time, right? And to be able to pay the bills because I didn't have enough clients to pay the bills, and I wasn't charging as much as I should because I was still new, right? And I still was like, you know, figuring it out, right?
Right.
Um, but I hurt myself and I couldn't walk anymore. And it
Mm.
was workman's comp. And so I was literally just stuck home on bed rest and told all sorts of things about why I wasn't worth being able to go to the doctor, why I wasn't worth being able to have medical treatment for a legitimate injury. This whole belief around, being a liar. And so I feng shuied my space on purpose to help me heal my body because that was the energy that I needed in my space was healing energy. That was what I needed to be successful at because my body was deteriorating to the point that I knew I was going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life if I didn't do something. Because fighting the titans of insurance was not helping, especially when I had an employer that was lying about my injury because they didn't want to pay the insurance bill, right?
Right.
Like they didn't want their premiums to go. Like insurance is such a horrid thing. Like it's the worst invention that we ever decided to come up with. I get it, but like it's a problem,
Yeah.
so I had to do it, and so I used feng shui to do it, but you have to be intentional about the space that you're in. And that's really when I figured out, like, it is a 3D vision board. We use these little tiny vision boards, but it's not
Mhm.
going to work if you're looking at an 18 by 2, you know what I mean?
Right.
A little picture frame full of all these visions and dreams isn't going to do you any good when, 1,000 square feet of your space is all reflecting the opposite.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit. You've got my curiosity piqued about when you were injured and you were, trying to recover and you were going through all this. And I know it's probably different for everybody, but for you, when you say you used feng shui to create this space of healing, what what did that look like? What did that space look like for you?
For me, it was about putting myself in what I would call the personal power position of my space.
Mhm.
Everybody has one, right? Everybody has one, whether it be for sleeping or working or whatever. You all have your personal space. And each space, like I talked about the red posts and the black posts, it's a little more elaborate than that. That's a very
Okay.
like high level looking at it. But if I'm a black post person, right? I want to be in a black post area, like an area that's supportive of my goal, right?
Mhm.
I want to use my space in a way that supports me energetically, because energetically is the source of existence, right? It's
Right.
the source that powers us. Like if without that spark of life, which is energy, we don't exist. um but it flows everywhere. It's in the air, it flows like water. It's just everything is energy.
Right.
um but we have to be in alignment with that energetic frequency of the universe. You know how if you go outside and you stay outside in nature for a certain level of time, and you will, your energetic frequency will shift. It will actually
Yeah.
adjust and sync up to the natural frequency of the earth, which is like 7 point something, right?
Okay.
That's the natural frequency of nature. It's actually our natural frequency. It's what the earth vibrates at, right?
Hmm.
7.34 megahertz or whatever it is. It's just a random number.
Right.
It's the frequency of nature. If you go outside and you sit in nature long enough and just listen and breathe, your energetic frequency will sync back up to that. That's your natural frequency. It's when you feel at peace and it's when you feel calm,
Mm.
right? You've
Yeah.
experienced this, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
And it's intentional. But when you go back out into life, life gets stressful and life kicks you out your cool, basically, right? It shifts your
Right.
energetic frequency into ah! That's why you need to go out into nature to get back to. But you take that and you bring it to your home, and now your home feels chaotic.
Yeah.
If you shift the energy of your home to reflect the energetic frequency that you want to feel, you can bring peace into your home. You literally have to create the energetic frequency in your environment,
Yeah.
because you are tainting it all the time with what you bring to the table.
Right. The so for me, I'm the type of person, I if I'm in a large crowd of people, I tend to like want to push back because I there's too much stimulation. I can become overstimulated with people, and that does kind of pique the anxiety.
Hmm.
Um, and when you say you bring that home, I mean, so I come home, I just kind of kick my shoes off over to the side, and there's not necessarily any rhyme or reason to the design of any spaces. Um, and maybe that's kind of where I think, like you can see my desk back here, I've got all kinds of stuff back there, and it's just kind of chaotic. Um, I usually call it organized chaos, but perhaps that's kind of holding me back a little bit, because sometimes I do feel like I'm rushed to get things going, get things done, lose my train of thought. Um,
It's a
in my
replica of what you feel when you're out in a crowd. It's the
Okay,
way you manifest it at home.
yeah,
It's the way we reflect how we feel. When you
hmm,
clean that up, you start to feel more at peace. You start to sync
yeah,
back up to your natural frequency, which is the frequency of nature, which is also the frequency of abundance. But you bring that chaos from whatever. And part of
right,
it is not just the day-to-day stuff. It's not just the day-to-day stuff that you bring home. It's the life stuff that you carry in your brain from your childhood that you
yeah,
reflect all the time because that's what you believe, right? So for somewhere, right, there's a belief about being unsafe in a crowd or being anxious in
right,
a crowd. And so like that's how we reflect things at home, because it's not about it is about the day-to-day stuff. We bring that home, and we often that is more instantaneous, right? Where we lash out
right,
at our people around us or our space or our pets even, right? Like,
hmm.
you know, I don't want to play with you right now. Like, why do you not want to, stop? I don't want to pet you. Like,
Right,
okay. But you know what I mean? Like, we do that. That is a reflection of, but But the reflection of space and like your organization stuff, those tend to be how we reflect sabotage, how we reflect this failure, like how we make it happen, because it's what we believe, it's what we've been taught. Like I was taught that I would never amount to anything more than a housewife. Didn't matter that no matter what my dream was, no matter how often I said I want this, they were like, you're not smart enough for that, you're not good enough for that. If you want to be a CEO of a company, why don't you just marry a man that's a CEO of a company? Like,
Gotcha.
you can't do this thing. You can't do this thing for whatever reason, because you're a girl. That was a lot of it, right? I had several parents that were very sexist about what girls can and cannot do. It just, so much of that is then how we reflect it in our environment, but then it's also reflected in our world, right? It's reflected in our successes and our failures in the world, because we sabotage our own success because we don't believe that we can. And it's all reflected in our environment where we believe those things and what those things are. We don't even know usually what the tape is that's running in our head.
Right.
But when we start to read our space will tell us what that tape is saying. And that's really how you use Feng Shui the right way. Like that's really how you use Feng Shui. There's a lot of math and technical stuff with the Feng Shui part, but learning how to use your space literally as a tool, that part's not the hard part. You just need somebody to teach you how to do it. That's the easy part. The Feng Shui part, that's just math and calculations. And that's, and so that's how I end up working with clients, is teaching them how to use their space and then like giving them, here's what you need to do. Like I do the part for them, so they don't have to worry about the technical part, the math part, because that's what I do. But then teaching them how to actually use their space and as a language and as a tool to be able to say, okay, I'm sabotaging myself right now. Where and why, and and use your mirror, because we all live somewhere, and it mirrors us all the time. That's why when we get sick, it turns into right? But when we start to feel better, we clean it up. Or if we clean it up, we start to feel better. It's the same. You can choose to clean it up and make yourself feel better, or you can wait till you feel better and then you'll want to clean it up. It's just.
And this is, so when you talk about empowering female entrepreneurs, for you, that's, that's kind of where it starts. Let's take assessment of what's going on around you. That's going to give us better clarity of what's going on inside of you. And then we can design this space that's going to more align with what you want from life and career than what you currently have. Did I kind of capture the
100%,
essence of it?
Like literally 100%. I call it design for who you're becoming.
Okay.
And it's how I do things differently. Like most people design for who you are right now, but I don't. I want to look at who are you becoming and what is it going to take for us to get you there. Let's design that right into your space so that you have room to be a person. And that's what's been weird for you.
It's got me questioning my space now. I'm like, oh, what's going on in here? But let's talk a little bit about where folks can find you, find what you're doing. If there's somebody listening to this episode and they're like, hey, I've got to connect because my space is a mess. Where would people find you? I know you've given me some links that I'll include in the description, but I'll go ahead and let you kind of share out where folks can find you and how they can work with you and whatnot.
There's a couple ways. So if you're ready, like if you know this is what you need and you're ready to jump in, I do take one-on-one clients. You can book an appointment. It's by application only. I don't take everyone. But you can book an appointment. You can go to peaceandprosperityalignment.com /apply and book an appointment with me to see if we're a fit. Or if you're not ready to jump in, but you want to start really looking at your own clutter and learning what your
Mm.
own clutter is telling you, because your own clutter has a message. Your own clutter is the message. Like, it has all
Mhm.
the message in it. If that's where you are and that's where you're ready to start, I do have a free download that I give to um, listeners when I like to come onto this podcast like this, because it helps so much. And it's my personal 5-step method to declutter your mindset. And it's literally called Declutter Your Mindset. You can get it at declutteryourmindset.com. It's pretty straightforward. And as for me, you can find me on the all over the internet. My website is krystalholm.com, and I'm of course on social media. I'm getting ready to launch YouTube, so maybe
Okay.
you might want to follow me over there. But I am of course on Facebook and Instagram.
Now, do you strictly work with female clients, or do you work with males as well? Or
I do work with men. I'm not opposed to working with men.
Mhm.
I find most of my clients are probably 98% of my clients are women. But I do have men that get it, that see the value in creating space for who they're becoming as well, and looking at their own stuff. Uh, because you have to go through that process of being able to face your stuff, and
Yeah.
uh, maybe that's the difference. I don't know what's the difference
Yeah.
between the willingness to do that work or not. But yeah, I do work with men.
Well, let me ask you this. I'd like to ask you kind of a loaded question. Is
Sure.
that all right?
Hmm.
And I say it's loaded, but maybe it's not. Maybe you've got, I know everybody's different and there's a lot of assessments that need to take place and different things to kind of get everything going. But just throwing this out there, and if you could give some advice on, anxiety is one of those things that I do coaching and I work with a lot of people that have a lot of anxiety. I know people that have a lot of anxiety,
Hmm.
and when thinking about somebody that is just day to day, they have the stress and anxiety that builds up, and sometimes maybe they don't even understand why. What would be like just some quick hitters for them as they think about their space? So every day they come home, they're anxious, their thoughts are just nonstop. What is something that they could assess around them that may help them kind of figure out a better flow, if that makes sense?
Sure. What you really want to do is create peace in your
Mhm.
space. There is a reason for the expression your home is your castle. It is. You really need to surround yourself with things that you love, only things that you love.
Mhm.
Um, Things that you need and things that you use as well, but you need to love those things, right?
Right.
Like you love the things that you use, but everything else is just clutter. If you start if you start looking at your space like an extension of you, right?
Mhm.
And treat it like your best friend instead of like this obligation, right? This burden, because it's a reflection of who you are. As long as you continue to treat your space like a burden, know that you're treating yourself as a burden, because that's what you're telling yourself. That's
Mm.
literally the words that you are
Yeah.
telling yourself. Cleaning my house is a burden. Hmm. Okay. Taking care of me is a burden, right? If you start treating your home like your best friend, treat it like a separate thing. And that's okay. Buy yourself flowers, or I don't know what men do. Like and
Right.
that would be the equivalent of flowers. But you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, do those things for yourself that create an environment that brings you peace. This is your escape from everything else outside of the world. This is where you come for you.
Mhm.
And so keep the crap out and design a space for you. Treat it like your best friend, because it allows you to start treating yourself like your best friend. like you love you. And when you love you, your anxiety drops down, your peace drops down, because you know you're in a safe place. I have anxiety too. I think a lot of adult survivors of adult abuse survivors, I think all of us have anxiety. There's a PTSD around that, right? There's when no place has ever been safe for you. Me, I created space when I was little as safe for me. That was like in my room, like under the bed, in the closet. This is what you're doing. You're just allowing yourself to create a safe space for you. But it's okay for you to own your whole space. You don't have to hide in the closet anymore from the monsters. Like the monsters aren't there. Allow yourself to own it and be and fill it. That's the problem. We were never allowed to fill our space. You had to be small, because if you were seen, it was dangerous, right? When you stay small, when you play big in your house, when you play small in your house, you feel anxious, and it's hard to play big in your own house. But your house needs to be a safe place for you to play big. And especially if you work from home and you run your own company, you need to be able to play big from home. Right.
You had mentioned, playing in the closet as a kid, and that's one big memory that I have. And I think you're right on the money with you're hiding, but you're kind of using playtime as an excuse. Cause I had a little desk, like a homework desk and a chair, and I would push all that into my closet and put a light in there and shut the door. And it was just like this big blank space because I didn't have much in it. But it was like my office, and I could go in there and just be creative and pretend the world outside didn't exist. So I think that just brought back, it's funny how a word or a statement can bring back a memory like that. But I guess what I'm hearing from you is that, in a space where if you're feeling anxious, if you don't feel comfortable in that space, you kind of need to look at the things around you and say, what is this? Is this bringing me what I need? Is this bringing me the peace, the tranquility,
Right. And do you mind if I hot seat you?
No,
like,
go ahead.
I don't usually, but like this,
right.
You asked, and
yeah,
so
we'll do it.
Why not? I would invite you to look at your space.
Yeah.
Because you just told me a story about your closet and going in there and putting your desk in there and closing the door. And I invite you to objectively look at your space the way I'm looking at your space. Yeah. You have a dark gray walls.
Yeah.
And it's you're living in a closet. Your office is still your closet. You're still living your childhood play area.
Yeah.
Your office just is a few feet bigger, but it's just as dark, and it's just as, I bet it's just like your closet. I bet money it's just like your closet. If you think about what was in there and how much space you had and how cluttered it was and how chaotic, and what part was yours to play in and what part was all of the stuff we stick in closets. Because the stuff we stick in closets are the things we want to hide.
Right. Yeah, it's a good point. Maybe I need to put a bright color on one of these walls and see what happens, and get
just
rid of some
sure
of
the right one.
the extra stuff over there. Yeah. Well, it's definitely a fascinating topic, one that I've heard of, but I've never really had a conversation around. So I appreciate you coming on the podcast and just sharing your expertise on it. I know it's hard to get deep into something within 40 minutes to an hour, but I would encourage anybody listening to make sure you check out the links. I'll have everything provided in the description below. And I just want to say thank you, Krystal, for coming on. And I look forward, maybe in the future, maybe I'll see, what I could do. I'll look at my space, and then, maybe I could have you back on, and you can put me back on the hot seat and see, how things have changed. But or maybe I could just hire. I might have to just become a client and have you tell me how to do it, right? But
I have some openings currently.
Okay.
I don't always have openings to take new one-on-one clients because of how much I'm only one person. I can only
right. You can
only
do so
I don't
much.
always have openings, but I do currently. So yes, if you are looking, I am taking openings, and I'd be happy to
Hmm.
come back. It's been a pleasure being here today. This has been, I love talking about this stuff. This is
Yeah.
absolutely my passion. You can probably tell I get a little fired up about it. I love this. It's
Right.
so transformational, a way to change your life. It literally changes your life.
Yeah, and that's kind of what's really kind of caught my attention here is that being a coach and looking at the mindset and kind of seeing what's going on in the mind. I very rarely do I ever ask any of my clients about what's your space like. So it's given me a whole new dimension and element to think about now. And maybe that's a question that I need to start asking when somebody comes on with, problems that related to anxiety or whatever. It's like, well, what's your space like? But anyways, thank
Yes,
you
well, I'll
again.
see you on the books.
Yeah, yeah. Might have to get some of your expertise, help me fix my space, and that way I can.
I would love to.
So,
I would love
anyways, we'll
to.
talk business another time. But thank
Awesome.
you
Thank
again,
you.
and you have a wonderful rest of your day. And yeah, everybody go check her out and check out the website.
Thanks, Brian.
Hang tight.
Bye.
I'm gonna talk to you for just a second offline here.